All right, folks, welcome to the very first Unreal sort of streaming over my shoulder, watching what I do when I make one of my projects, Constellation. Basically, this is Constellation 2, the next generation that we're going to make in Unreal 5.1 using MetaSounds. So, yeah, I did actually get a little bit of the start before I started recording any of this sort of stuff, but I just want to let you know sort of kind of where this is going to be and what it's kind of like geared towards in a sense. So, this is sort of going to be like a diary in a way, you know? So I'm going to be doing things and I'll probably be pausing the recording a lot and then doing it again. It's not exactly going to be streaming because I'm not streaming any of this sort of stuff. But the idea is, and I'm not taking questions or anything like that. But basically what will happen is I'm going to start trying to figure things out in terms of starting to prototype and figure out how I can do things in my project. And whenever I run into issues that are going to stop me, then I will stop the recording. And once I figure out the issues or a workaround or something like that, I will begin the recording again. And we'll probably take this in like half-hour increments or something like that. Maybe it might be a little longer than that. We'll see what happens. But essentially, you're going to call this a development diary, I guess. Full disclosure, I have never really been super in-depth into Unreal before. I have done a little bit of work into it in the past here and there, back in Unreal 4 days a bit. Have not tried 5.0, have not tried 5.1 really all that much, and know nothing at all about MetaSounds. Of course, I know a little bit about visual scripting because I've done a little bit of visual scripting in various kinds of situations. So, I'm using my knowledge of my meager knowledge of blueprints from, let's say, 4.0 days. But anyway, basically that's the deal. So before we get into too much other information, I do want to just sort of talk about kind of what is being planned. So I'm just going to go do some things, and so I'll just switch to my next thing here, which is, now that I'm started, I'm basically going to start working on, let me just move this over because I have my camera on over here, I think. Okay. So basically I have, so what I want to do is I want to start prototyping. I want to start working. Sometimes you call this thing, you call what I'm going to be working on unit tests, because the idea is to try and test some small part of the overall functionality of what I want to make, okay? Now, remember what I want to make is 16 layers of 16 by 16 sequencers, okay? Now, the thing that I absolutely need to know for sure, up front really, is can I get like a change to happen rhythmically in a reliable way and have various kinds of events happen for it. So there's going to be a lot of stopping and starting and stuff like that. Anyway, so the deal is, what I want to do is test to make sure I've got a constant pulse that will work for this particular situation. So I have a constant pulse happening, and I might as well just use 16 pulses, okay? So there's going to be a lot more complexity right now, but we're just literally just trying to see, can we make something work? So a lot of the times whenever I'm starting any kind of project, I like to see if someone's got part of my project available. Now, I was super, super, super lucky in the days of the earlier version of Constellation. I was starting to look at different kinds of ways of organizing it. I had tried a version of Pure Data before, and I was actually pretty comfortable with it, but I wasn't using Pure Data to actually create the timing for my piece. I was using Unity's own individual internal timing, which was really horribly atrocious for generative sequencing. So what I ended up doing was actually going into C-Sound. There's a version of C-Sound called Cabbage that you can basically use. It runs on all the different platforms, and it creates all kinds of things. You can create applications, you can create plugins, and you can run it inside game engines. There's not yet a fully functional version of Cabbage for Unreal, but there is definitely for Unity. And what happened was I happened to get onto the site and got a very good response. I basically laid out what I was planning on building with a friend with the on the forum, and the guy who basically runs the Cabbage forum essentially, and who wrote Cabbage, Rory. Um, he was able to basically just whip up very quickly in Unity an 8x8 grid sequencer, like ready to go. That was just like a single layer. He got a single layer going for me. So as a result of him doing that much work, basically for me for free, I sort of felt like obligated. Like, okay, I should just try this out and see if this actually can work for me. That kind of thing. So that's basically what I did. That's essentially what I ended up doing. So that is basically, so now in this particular case, I was basically looking for the same thing. Like, hey, does somebody have a sequencer example? And there are some sequencer examples that I've run into. I've checked with Dan Reynolds, who's a really awesome, one of the go-to guys about Unreal Audio. Absolutely. He's one of the guys that, you want to basically ask questions about on the Unreal forum. Speaking of which, there is an Unreal forum available. It is called Unreal Slackers. It is a really large forum with a lot of stuff, but there's a whole audio channel with lots of people asking questions and stuff like that. And you can dang well bet I will be on that channel asking lots of questions. so don't be surprised to see me leaving things. Anyway, so what I was wondering was, does anybody have something that I can get started with? And one of the things that I absolutely do need to get started with is I need some kind of metronome. I need some kind of reliable, consistent timing grid to be able to put this stuff on so that I can make things happen. Okay. So I happened to run into a post on LinkedIn from this gentleman right here, Horacio Valdivieso. And he's basically created a metronome. That's what he did. He created a metronome in MetaSounds, already ready to go. And so that was pretty cool. So that's basically something you go over here to Tools, and he will show you this whole stuff. And then you basically go to Tools, say Metronome MetaSound Patch, and it is a U asset. For some reason, when I downloaded it on Unity and unpacked it, it put a dot in the file name, which is not allowable, by the way, on Unreal. So you cannot name anything with a dot. So I thought it was actually version .1, which, for early versions, that's not an unusual version situation to say. But here's an example of this of what he's got going on. He's basically got these situations where he can start and stop the metronome, and the metronome can do odd meters and all this other kind of stuff. So you can, check this out. His abovenoisestudios.com is the website. Now that I've got a metronome and I technically have good timing, for the metronome, and it's just going to go ding, 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 right? Like that. So now I need to basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one row, only one row. That's it. Eventually we can duplicate that row 16 times, and then we will have a 16 by 16 grid, and we can work on transformations of things like that in the grid if we want to do that. We're going to just take it a little bit at a time. We're first going to just do one row of 16 notes. Now, what I know is a little bit of design stuff that you guys don't, which is basically, I know kind of what I'm looking for. So I'll let you know what I'm talking about here. So inside Unreal, what I ended up doing was creating a array, that is basically a list or a row of basically blocks and cells inside blocks. Okay, that's what's going on. Now, in the version that we're going to have later on, we're not going to have it quite be like this. It won't quite be in this particular way, because we're actually going to be more or less creating 4,096 boxes and 4,096 spheres to go in those boxes, essentially. So that's the idea. In other words, I'm going to be creating a 16 by 16 by 16 group of boxes and a 16 by 16 by 16 group of spheres that go inside the boxes that are independent therein. Because that's important, because otherwise I can't rotate them outside of the boxes. So This is just basically a temporary trying out of this sort of stuff. I just created, a box with a cell inside it. And essentially my goal is I'm going to hook up this metronome to these objects, and I'm going to have it light up the position. So that does mean I need to make myself another box, which I'm going to call the playhead. Okay, so we're going to basically create a playhead, and what that playhead will do is it will change position to the position of each one of these row objects. So I will need again, I'll probably be using a lot of Unity terminology in this particular case, but I'm going to be needing an array of transforms. That's what I'm going to be needing. So an array of transforms, and then I'm going to be iterating through the array of transforms. I'm just basically going to be going in there, iterating through the array of transforms. When I get to the length of the whole array, it'll just repeat again, essentially. Now, what'll happen then is that we're going to have the playhead detect whether or not the circle is active. So the circle is the note, if you will, right? So then we can basically click on the circle, and then we'll either get the note happening or we won't. And by happening, really, I mean that the render will be turned on this object, if that is possible to do. I hope it is, that you can just simply turn them on and turn them off, but maybe not. I have no idea. I really don't know. This is a brand new world. I don't know what's possible inside Unreal and what's not. At the very least, I guess what I might do is I might swap materials to a material that was unlit, or to a material that was lit for that matter, because these are unlit actually. And then that would basically be dark. Those would be darker colors. Or maybe I would switch to a darker color. We'll figure it out. But basically the idea is I'm just creating a row, and I just want to base like a drum machine row, essentially, like I'm making a drum part or whatever. And we'll have to probably bring in a wave file to play on this sort of thing. But now we can kind of get into Horacio's cool content. So he basically made this metronome graph patch, and if you go inside here, he has a U asset that he basically created here. And then the idea is that you go create yourself a sound source, a new MetaSound source, basically, and then you can edit it in the blueprints. So once you edit it, you're going to get something like this. And you'll see the results here. Actually, you don't immediately get that. What you'll get is this. You'll get input and output. Nothing else. Just an input going to an output and nothing in the middle. So what I had to do was go through here and look for, I think it was that interface. No, it was actually right-clicking here. So right-clicking here, you go to graphs, and that was the thing. It was one of the graphs, basically. So again, you can see I have not created a whole bunch of things here at all. I haven't tested hardly anything here. All I have is the metronome patch. And it works pretty well. And you can actually, if you double click this, you can go inside. It's worth taking a look at. It's kind of dauntingly complex for as basic of a thing as this is. This is a very dauntingly complex looking blueprints thing. So that may just be how blueprints works, and it's just really too complex. But anyway, if we turn this on, you can hear. Yep, you can hear the sound of the metronome going on. And basically, it's also generating notes as well as the click. Now, the cool thing about it is that you can actually set this to any, there are beats per bar. Let's see if I can, yeah, there we go. So there's beats per bar. You can make the loop bars, number of bars per loop. So you can create a loop of a certain number of bars if you want to. Pulse audio volume multiplier, so make it louder in volume. You can also change what the high frequency versus the low frequency. So it's 1320 for the high frequency and 800 for low. You can make it however you want, and you could, don't know if you can change it in real time. You'd have to give I don't think I can just put a new number in here. No, it doesn't do it in real time. So that's an interesting thing. So, but if I stopped it and played it again, there you go. Okay, so obviously we could control this maybe later on if we wanted to do some cool thing with this later on. We'll figure it all out. Anyway, so we now have a good, solid metronome, and it works pretty well. So we can double click on this, and we will get the overall editor for all of this kind of stuff that's in here. And that is, like I said, for a plain old metronome, this is ridiculously complex. There's a lot of stuff going on here. We can take a look at all the different parts that are here. So there is an audio pulse. By the way, you can right click and move around inside here, inside the MetaSound stuff. So basically you got the audio pulse that's essentially here, and you've got this pulse high frequency, pulse low frequency, all these different things. Here's a sine wave that it basically is using essentially. That's the sine wave. And there's a bunch of different trigger types, various kinds of things. And there's a beat counter that tells you how many beats there are going to be in a bar, and you can set that to more beats in the bar. But of course, you can do that at the top if you want to, which is good. There's a bar counter that counts however many bars are in your loop. So yeah, some of this information is probably not all that much information, or needing that I need to have that much information. But I was looking at this big sort of red area here, and for this BPM to seconds, this is going to be very relevant for my purposes. Okay, and the reason why is because that BPM to seconds, I'm going to have multiple tracks, right? Multiple, if you will, layers, right? And each of those layers, I want to have it be independent as far as rhythmic values, but I want all the tempo to be consistent. So I want it to be all hooked up to the same tempo, but I want to have the beat multiplier be different. In other words, it's going to be smaller than 1.0. 1.0 is the beat, basically, right? Anything smaller than 1.0 is a division of the beat. So that means I would have 0.5 for eighth notes and 0.33 for triplets, all the different things, right? So the idea is that I'll have these different values that I'll be able to select from, so that I can basically play these values against each other, rhythmically speaking, to get, different kinds of rhythmic, syncopation and stuff like that, which would be kind of cool. Anyway, so that is basically it. So now the fun starts. So we're basically going to try and get into here. We're going to have to also hook up this to the MetaSound patch, which we'll figure out how that actually is going to work. So that's basically it. I'm basically telling you that there's a cool metronome, so you can use that metronome. He's planning on creating more tools for people, so I'm all very much in favor of that, because I like the idea of existing tools. I have to say that one of the things that made me, also not decide on Unreal before, and at times besides the graphics requirement, is also the fact that there's not as much support generally. There was not as much support. There's not as much documentation. Just not really. Not much documentation. You go into MetaSounds, you'll find some very, very basic stuff about, like, hey, MetaSounds is really cool. And then you go and you look at all the different references of each of the individual nodes. That's great. But there's no getting started manual or anything like that. And, when you watch videos on MetaSounds, we'll probably do our own at some point. But when you watch videos on MetaSounds, they're totally geared by whatever the person is interested in. Like, so if they're only interested in, making just music loops work, or something like that, then that's what it's going to be based on. If they're mainly interested in sound design, then you'll only have like a sound design oriented one. So anyway, but again, that Discord is really super helpful. The Unreal Slackers forum, and so that's basically it. I will see you guys in the next one. And as always, I hope this helps you get your game audio on. Take care.